And welcome back to the Capitol Report. I'm Steve Lance. The United States arrest of Venezuelan dictator Nicolás Maduro is costing China its supply of Venezuela's oil. So what are other political implications for the CCP? Joining me now to discuss is Michael Lucci, founder and CEO of State Armor. Michael, great to have you back with us.
Steve, it's great to be on, and it's great that Xi Jinping, the dictator of China, lost not just the oil. He lost an ally, he lost the oil, he lost face. He was embarrassed in Venezuela by President Trump, and he lost the commitment he claimed he made of an all-weather strategic partnership with Venezuela. Close friends, dear brothers, good partners. That's what Xi Jinping said he offered to Venezuela, and all of that disappeared in one night when President Trump authorized an operation that removed that leader and hopefully will lead to a free people in Venezuela, a free and prosperous people like they were before the socialists took over the country.
And we're on autocrat dictator watch tonight as we see situations unfolding in Iran, another very close ally of China. The world is changing very quickly. Michael, what does the arrest of Maduro actually signal to China and as they watch the unrest in Iran? And what do you make of their response thus far?
What it signals to China is that their allies are not permanent. We can remove them. And what it signals to South America is that your relationship with China is not permanent. We can end it. So we're seeing, obviously, with Maduro, he's no longer going to be leader of Venezuela. Well, who depended on Venezuela oil besides China? Cuba did. The communist regime there was dependent on those oil revenues from Venezuela. They're teetering on the brink now. As you mentioned, Iran is teetering on the brink. These regimes have all overstayed their life by decades and decades, and they've been held on life support by other evil regimes that just want to be creating problems across these regions. So these regimes are in great risk. And what's happening at the macro level is China's broader oil supplies are really being brought into question, which is going to make them think once more about whether they really want to go to attack Taiwan if the United States can cut off most of its external oil supplies.
China obviously having tremendous economic issues, this compounding that. Any day the people might start to come to the streets like they are in Iran because of the situation that Iran is in economically. That's why we're seeing this, one of the reasons. Speaking of responses, Michael, we saw pro-Maduro demonstrations springing up right here in the United States within hours of his capture. Do you think that those protests were organic, or should we be looking for, dark money or perhaps some of the people that are organizing them?
Steve, we know those protests were not organic. Many of them were funded and directed by Neville Roy Singham. This man, in my opinion, is a clear agent of the Chinese Communist Party. While he is still apparently an American citizen, he has for a long time operated out of Shanghai. He actually uses one of the same buildings as a propaganda agency for the Chinese Communist Party, and he pours hundreds of millions of dollars into the most extremist advocacy and nonprofit groups within the United States. And that's why across 5, 6, 7 cities, they were able to immediately have boots on the ground protesting against the United States action against Maduro because the Chinese Communist Party didn't like it. And Steve, what was really interesting about those protester boots on the ground is they were also immediately met by actual Venezuelans who fled the communist regime of Venezuela because of the death, destruction, and starvation. And the Venezuelans who came to America took the other side of that protest against the Communist Party and all of their goons here.
Michael, switching gears just a bit here. This past weekend at the Chinese consulate in Los Angeles, demonstrators held an event there in support of the United States capturing Maduro. We have some footage to play of the response from what appears to be a CCP-linked security guard who hospitalized some of those demonstrators and pepper sprayed them. Let's take a look.
你敢打吗？你能死3回？你敢打吗？来，到背后来，你打我，打我，你打我呀！我3个人一块干你！你打我！你下来买，给我买！来！
You can see the spraying there. There is another angle. Yeah, this one here, he comes out onto public property, sprays them and runs back. It's really incredible. With these, reports and not reports, but the actual investigation and shutting down of these CCP-linked police stations in New York City and other places, what is your response and reaction when you see footage like this in the United States?
Steve, this is the most clear-cut case of transnational repression we have ever seen. And what is transnational repression? It's when foreign thugs, like the Chinese Communist Party, hire local thugs within the United States to try to enforce their will and even to enforce their communist laws within the United States. So what exactly happened here? You had some protesters using their First Amendment rights. Those have been guaranteed since the origin of the United States. So they're exercising their First Amendment rights to speak out in a public space. And the Communist Party's apparently hired thug, assaulted these people. And he acted as false law enforcement with these people. So you have multiple felonies, and he has apparently been charged with multiple felonies. But I think it's an important point to say, we need to treat these felonies differently. When it's a foreign regime doing it, states and the federal government need to codify what this is, which is transnational repression, and say, whenever you commit a crime in the context of transnational repression, we're doubling, tripling, quadrupling your punishment, because that's what's appropriate when a foreign regime attacks our constitutional order.
And Michael, as you know, the Chinese Communist Party often operates in the shadows. Occasionally, they slip up and we see their true colors like we do here. How does China's systematic grip on various nations sort of reveal that alarming scope of its global ambitions? And why should the international community be concerned?
The way China engages with other nations is very different. They're looking to employ leverage over other nations to export not just technologies. They do want to export technologies, but embedded in those technologies and committing with those technologies is an authoritarian approach to civil society. So China exports, they are the top producer of surveillance technologies in the world because they run a complete surveillance state. And they like to export those technologies even to the United States. And what we increasingly find on nearly everything that China exports is that there are espionage backdoors and sabotage backdoors embedded in those products. So what they're actually doing is they're empowering the local governments to act as tyrants, and they're empowering themselves to act as the king tyrant on top of the local tyrant. So when you engage with the Chinese Communist Party, you need to understand they don't really care who's in charge so long as whoever's in charge is controlled by them. So they like to have little dictators in country, and they like to be the big dictator that controls the technologies, the purse strings, and ultimately the power to control what happens in other countries, including, as we're seeing, they want to do that in the United States as well.
Michael Lucci, as always, greatly appreciate your insights. Thank you.